Imagine if someone told you, if I gave you $1 million in exchange for 1 minute of your life, would you accept? Most people would say no, but the strange thing is, every day we waste hours of our lives for free, as if they have no value. This is the story of a young man who discovered too late that the most valuable thing in life is not money, but time. There was a young man named Khaled, 18 years old. Like many young people, he had big dreams. He always used to say, "One day I will become successful and achieve great things." But his problem was very simple, and millions of people have the same problem. Every day he would say, "I'll start tomorrow." He spent long hours on his phone, scrolling, watching, and playing. Then the day would end, and he would say to himself, "It's okay, tomorrow I'll start seriously." But tomorrow would come, and the same thing would happen again. One day, Khaled sat with his grandfather in the garden. His grandfather was a wise man who had lived many years. The grandfather looked at Khaled and asked, "Khaled, do you know what the most valuable thing a human has is?" Khaled immediately replied, "Money." The grandfather smiled and said, "Money can come back, even if you lose it." Khaled said, "Then health." The grandfather replied, "Health is important, but it is not the most valuable." Khaled stayed silent for a moment and asked, "Then what is it?" The grandfather looked at him and said, "Time." Khaled was surprised and said, "But everyone has time." The grandfather laughed softly and said, "Yes, but the problem is that most people only realize its value after they lose it." Then the grandfather said something surprising. "Do you know, Khaled, scientists say that the average person spends more than 7 years of their life just using their phone." Khaled was shocked. 7 years? The grandfather nodded and said, "Yes, and if you add the time wasted on procrastination, a person might lose decades of their life without even realizing it." Then the grandfather took an old watch out of his pocket and said, "Every second that passes on this watch is a part of your life that will never return." Days passed. One day, the grandfather became very sick. He was taken to the hospital. Khaled sat beside him, and his grandfather looked very weak. The grandfather held Khaled's hand and said in a quiet voice, "Khaled, if I could go back in time, I would wish for just 1 minute." Khaled asked, "1 minute?" The grandfather said, "1 minute to spend more time with my family. 1 minute to say a kind word. 1 minute to do something meaningful." Then he said a sentence Khaled would never forget. People think they have plenty of time, until they realize they never had enough. A few days later, the grandfather passed away. Khaled returned home. He felt deep sadness. He sat in his room and saw the old watch his grandfather had given him. He picked up the watch, and he could hear its ticking sound. Tick, tick, tick. With every second passing, he remembered his grandfather's words, "The minute that goes, never comes back." At that moment, Khaled finally understood the truth. The problem was not that he didn't have time. The problem was that he was wasting the time he already had. Khaled opened his notebook and wrote a big sentence, "Start now, before now becomes too late." From that day on, Khaled began to change. He woke up early. He reduced the time he spent on his phone, and he started learning something new every day. He did not become successful in one day, but every day he moved one step forward. Years later, Khaled became a successful person, and he always told people, "The biggest mistake of my life was thinking I had plenty of time." The lesson: time is like water. If it slips through your hands, it will never return. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start now, even if it's just a small step, because life does not wait for anyone.